Biddy, where do you stand on this?
So I am very new in the pro-choice, pro-abortion, for Shane there. This was probably one of the last things I deconstructed, and it came from just having absolutely no knowledge on the topic whatsoever. That once I researched a lot of it, I have since switched positions from pro-life to pro-choice, and I agree with everything Cynthia just said. So there's my position.
Awesome. And Sunny.
So sorry about that. My cat was destroying something and I had to get him out of the room. So
those pesky cats.
So I am very much pro-choice. I tend to go along with Jenna Belk. I feel like it is a medical procedure that nobody should have a right to infringe upon. It should be HIPAA protected. I mean, I don't know how this is even a discussion because it's a medical procedure. And it should be between a woman and her doctor. It's only a problem because, in my opinion, well, actually, I don't really think it's an opinion. It is a form of oppression against women, but especially African-American women in particular. And we can get into that a little bit later. But I read an article about how this is directly related to suppression of people of color. And I thought that was quite interesting. So I want it to be openly available to anyone who needs it. In addition, I'm a woman who has had an abortion. I've also had miscarriages and I've had babies and grandbabies. And I used to live in Texas. I don't anymore. But I would take my daughter or my granddaughter anywhere across state lines, across the world if I had to get her the help that she needs. But that is a statement of privilege. Not everybody has that ability. So that means that people like me need to speak up for people who are unable to speak up for themselves or have the ability to do what they need to do. So I'm extremely pro-choice. And yes, it doesn't mean that it's pro-abortion, but I am absolutely pro-abortion because I don't think that abortion should be something that's even discussed outside of the medical office with a patient.
Fair enough. And Biddy has kind of already answered this question, but I just want to, for the other people that didn't answer this portion of it anyway, I stated that my position had changed. Biddy indicated that she used to be where I was. We were both theists. I think, Cynthia, you may have mentioned that you waffled as well. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. Thank you.
Okay. And how about you, Jenna Belk? You were previously a theist. Did you have a pro-life stance at that point? Very much.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I was one of those proud to be the woman that was pro-life people.
Wow. So were you picketing in front of abortion clinics, or you weren't bombing abortion clinics, right?
Well, I had a family that I found out were picketing at Planned Parenthood, and I wished that I had the opportunity to join them.
Okay. And how about you, Jenna and Miyu?
Yeah, I've always held the same position as I hold now as being pro-choice. Definitely going through nursing school has opened my eyes more in understanding the whole process, even, the ins and outs surrounding the reasonings as why a person would, why a woman, I should say, would need it to have an abortion. But yes, that position, even as a believer, when I used to be a believer myself, I never held to the idea that aborting was a wrong idea, even though whatever scripture may have said or whatever my surrounding family who were believers may have said about it and were against it, it never shook my, I guess, innate understanding of, well, it's something that a woman is making a decision for her body. And if men have so much opportunity to, make their wieners hard, then why not give more opportunity for women to address their own sexual health and needs too. And that includes, having to go through that tough decision of aborting an embryo.
Right. And how about you, Sunny? I know you used to be a couple of different types of theists, and you've oscillated between religions, but did you always have a pro-choice stance, or were you ever pro-life?
So I don't recall ever being terribly pro-life, but religion had a big role in my life for a long time. And so when I had my abortion, afterwards, I remember feeling very guilty, not because I thought that it was the wrong choice, but because of my faith. And I ended up with a non-denominational church. They had a group for Christian women who had had abortions, and it was a support group. And it was probably one of the most traumatic and awful experiences I've ever been through. And
the support group or the abortion?
Yeah, no, the support group.
Wow. With
the church. And I drove an hour twice a week for about 3 or 4 months to go to this support group. And it was, it was supposed to be where, it was basically where, as a Christian woman, you've made this terrible mistake, but you can ask God for forgiveness. But first you have to atone for what you've done. And one of the things we had to do was name our child and all of these type of things. And we went through this book that they had that was with a workbook. So we had to write down all of these things. And it was absolutely horrific. By the end of it, I couldn't go to the last thing where we had this ceremony for the unborn child and where we would ask for God's forgiveness and all of this stuff. I couldn't go to the last one. It was just too demoralizing for me. And it was after that my faith really started faltering. Although it had faltered a little bit. I mean, we had a discussion about that before, but that particular thing is what sticks out in my mind as being a source of religious trauma. The abortion itself was not as traumatic as the experience with that church and with that supposed support group, because that's not what it was. It was like filleting you open and making you feel like the most horrid person in the world. But then at the end, but God can forgive you if you atone for that. And I think that is one of the worst things, aside from the fact that I did have to walk across the picket line for my abortion as well. Those two things stick out in my mind. The abortion itself, I knew it was the right thing to do, and I've never regretted that decision, except for feeling guilty and starting up with that group. And that's the thing that I feel the most guilty about, is ever feeling like I needed to atone for anything.
Right. Wow. Well, I'm sorry that you had to go through that, but it really highlights the situation that this is probably something a lot of women have to go through. That something that would have never even occurred to me, actually. I hear the word support group, for women who've had abortions, and I'm thinking support. That sounds like torture.
Yeah.
So that is essentially what has happened in Texas. And I saw you kind of nodding and shaking your head, Sunny. And I know you have thoughts and opinions about that. And I know Cynthia probably does too. So let me go to you, Sunny. What are the implications here for women?
The implications are huge, because it's not just about whether a woman decides that she doesn't want to carry to term, which it should even be a question. But what concerns me more, as someone who works with children who have been physically and sexually abused, are those kids who are 10, 11, 12 years old, who are victims of sexual abuse and end up pregnant. Those are the ones that I'm most concerned about, because their brains are not fully developed, their bodies are not fully developed. They are at a much higher risk for all types of issues, including death during delivery. death during pregnancy,
Mm.
because their bodies are not developed. And on top of that, the fact that they have to carry a baby to term and have a baby from someone who violated them. What that ends up doing is creating, let's say that they give it up for adoption. Well, I can tell you that the foster care system is broken, and there are far too many kids in the system than there are families able to take them. And I'm not talking about just adoptive families, but families just to house them until they're able to be adopted. This is a huge problem. Let's say they keep the child. How is a 10, 11, 12-year-old who is a victim of child abuse, who most often is taken and put into foster care herself, supposed to support this child? There's so many implications that go far deeper than just, should a woman be allowed to carry? And first, let me just say, I shouldn't say woman, I should say someone with a uterus, because we have trans men who can also be experiencing this. So I don't want to leave anyone out. But I'm mostly concerned about these kids because they're not prepared, and the system is not prepared, not just for the young ones, but for teenagers, for young women, anyone who finds himself in this situation. It's going to be a huge drag on our entire economic system. They're creating a problem that they're not even thinking about. All they're thinking about is controlling people's choice and keeping people down. That's all that they're thinking about. They're thinking about their own power, and they're not thinking about all of the other implications that come along with it.